Well, hello Internet, and welcome to my Dart video tutorial. In this one tutorial, I'm going to teach you pretty much everything you'd learn in a standard 200 to 300 page book on Dart, as well as I'm going to show you how to install Dart, as well as Sublime Text 3 on Windows, as well as Macintosh, and I have a lot to do, so let's get into it. Alright, so you're going to see timestamps in the description underneath this video. You'll be able to click on to get to exactly what you want to learn if you want to skip this installation part. But if you're on Windows, this is how we're going to install Dart as well as make it work with Sublime Text 3. First thing you're going to want to do is get your command prompt, and you're going to want to right click on it and run as administrator. Then what we're going to do is we're going to use a really nice tool called Chocolatey. So we're going to go to chocolatey.org, and then here's your command prompt already opened up, and you're going to come down here and you're going to copy and paste this little script that we have right here, and we're going to paste it over into our command prompt and run it or hit enter. Then after we had done that, we are then going to be able to use Chocolatey. You might need to restart your command prompt if you have any problems, and you're going to type in choco install dart-sdk-version, and then whatever the latest version of Dart is. 1.11 works perfectly fine for now, and then you're going to hit enter, and then that's going to run all of that script, and it's going to say that you need to verify that, so we're going to type in 1 and hit enter again, and there we go. Dart has been installed. Now what we're going to do is type in choco install dartium-version 1.11.0 once again, and this is going to install a tool that we're not actually going to use in this part of the tutorial, but it might be beneficial to you later on in your Dart development, so we might as well install it. So type in that into your command prompt, and once again it's going to ask you to verify to run the script. Type in 1, hit enter, and that's going to install for you as well. And then after that is all set up, you're all done with the command prompt and Chocolatey, so let's go and make this work with Sublime Text 3. Now what we're going to do is in your browser go to packagecontrol.io/installation, and this is going to make it very easy for us to install things in Sublime Text 3. If you're using Sublime Text 2, you just click here. Otherwise, we're going to click on Sublime Text 3. You're going to copy all of this, and then you're going to open up Sublime Text 3, and if you don't have the console open, you're going to click on View, Show Console, and then you're going to paste in what you just got out of the website there, down here, and hit enter, and that's going to allow you to use package control, which is very useful. Now to bring it up, we're going to click on Tools and Command Palette. Once again, you might need to restart Sublime Text 3 to make this work. So click on Tools, Command Palette, and then you're going to come over here and you're going to type in Install, and then click on Install Package. After you do that, you're going to type in Dart, and then you're going to click on Dart, and there you go. Got a lot of things done. What's going to pop up here on your screen is that you're going to need to put the path to your Dart SDK in the preferences .sublime settings file like that, and how you're going to do that is go to preferences and then click on settings user, and you can see right there exactly how I did that. And you're just going to have to find the location for wherever the Dart-SDK is. If you did the installation that I did, this more than likely is going to work for you. Just make sure you put 2 backslashes. You have to do that. It's a little bit weird. And then after you do that, you're going to click on Save. Now we're going to go to Preferences, Package Settings, Dart, and then Settings User. And then once again, you're going to put the location exactly as I have it right here. Once again, in the description, there's a link to all this stuff typed out, so you'll be able to copy and paste if you'd like to. But you're going to put in exactly the same location right there and click on Save once again. Then after you have that all set up, inside of the project folder, wherever you're going to be creating all your Dart files, you're going to create a file called pubspec.yaml, exactly like that, and then type in exactly what I have right here. And then you're going to click on Save once again. Now we're going to want to save our project, so you're going to click on Project once again in Sublime Text 3, and then click on Save Project As, and then give your project a name. I just called it Dart Tut dot and Sublime dash project. This part you have to have. This can be whatever name you want, and then you want to click on Save once again. Now whenever you are going to be building everything, you're going to want to click on Tools, and then you want to go to Build System, and then you're going to want to go to Dart dash Pub Spec, and make sure this guy here has a check mark in it. And then we're going to want to verify this again in the same folder wherever you have pubspec.yaml and where you saved your project. You're going to create a new file, make sure the extension ends with Dart, like that, and we're going to type in just a standard little Dart application here just to verify that everything is working for us. And whenever we run that, how we're going to run it is just by going and clicking on F7 or Shift F7 if that doesn't work for you. And as you can see, everything's going to run right here. So now I'm going to show you how to install the exact same things on a Macintosh. Alright, to install everything on Macintosh, I'm going to use Homebrew, and you're going to want to go to brew.sh like this, and you're going to want to go and copy this guy right here, Ruby-E, copy all of that, and then you're going to want to open up your terminal. Now over in your terminal to install Homebrew, you're just going to paste all this in here, and you're going to hit enter, and Homebrew will be installed for you. I already have it installed, so I'm not going to install it once again. And then specifically to install Dart, we're then going to go brew, tap, and you're going to type in dart-lang/Dart like that, hit enter, and then you're going to go brew install Dart and hit enter once again, and then you're going to type in brew install Dart -- with content shell -- with Dartium. And Dartium, it's what that's going to install for you is a browser that's going to automatically execute Dart code and not convert it into JavaScript. So saves you a little bit of time. And of course you're going to hit enter after that. Then everything's going to be installed in regards to Dart on your system. Now we're going to go set up package control for Sublime Text 3. So here's Sublime Text 3. I'm going to copy all this. Then I'm going to open up Sublime Text 3. And if I want to come in here and view the console, I would say show console. And there it is. And then I'm going to paste in everything that I just took off of there. Okay? And then you're going to want to hit enter. After you do that, you're going to go to Tools and Command Palette, right like this, and you can type in Install, and whenever you do, you're going to see Package Control and a colon and Install Package. And then what you're going to want to do is type in Dart. I already have Dart installed, otherwise you would see Dart here as an option. You're going to click on the Dart that pops up here on your screen, and that will be installed for you. Now you need to set up everything else. So what are we going to do? Inside of the same folder where you're going to be creating all your Dart files, you're going to type in name, colon, my project, all this stuff, and you're going to save that, and that is a file called pubspec.yaml. There it is. And I have a link in the description that's going to have all these files for you. And then you're also going to have to get the location for your Dart SDK. So one thing we're going to need to do is open up your terminal. So let's open the terminal up again. And to get the location for brew, what we're going to do is type in brew prefix, exactly like this. And then we're going to copy user local like that, jump back over into Sublime Text, and then we're going to open up some settings files. So here we're going to go to Preferences and Settings User, open that up, and you can see right here, this is the user local part. That's the part that you're going to paste in there, and then afterwards you're going to put in opt/dart/lib_exec, exactly like that, and make sure this is called dart_SDK_path, and we're going to save that settings folder, and it looks like this if you don't know, Preferences, Sublime, Settings, exactly like that. And then you're going to do the same thing once again. You're going to go Preferences, and you're going to come down here to Package Settings, and you're going to go to Dart and Settings User. And then inside of that file, once again, the exact same line with the curly brackets on the top as well as the bottom, closing that off. And then after we have actually created a Dart application, you can see I just typed in void main like this, just a basic hello world little application here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down the function key as well as the shift key and click on F7. And whenever I do, you're going to see hello world prints down there. So there you go, guys. That is how to set up Dart on Windows as well as Macintosh using Sublime Text 3. Now let's get over and write some code. Okay, so let's start writing some code. What I have here is an HTML file. I just called it dart.html. And I went and created everything you see over here ahead of time just to save some time. And I also went and put the styling inside of here so that we'll have everything in just one file, so it saves some time as well. What we're basically going to be doing is targeting these IDs. So this sum for this guy right here, and then this will be num1, this will be num2, and this will have the ID of button. And then what we're going to, of course, need to do is bring in the script for our Dart file or our JavaScript, which is what our Dart file is going to be created into or converted into. And if you want to import a Dart file, what you're going to do is say application and Dart, and then you just have your source where it's located, and it's just going to be dart.dart. But for the most part, that's not going to work for you. Make sure you close off the script tag. That's a common error that people make. because what we're going to be doing is we're going to be converting our Dart files into JavaScript. And mainly Dart is used because the object-oriented part of it is a little bit easier to understand than what we'll have with JavaScript. So we can basically take advantage of the easier to understand version of Dart and then convert that Dart code into JavaScript. And how we're going to convert it, if you're on Windows, you're going to go into your command prompt, and if you are on Mac or Linux, you're going to go into your terminal, and you're just going to type in, after you're done writing all your code, Dart to JS -- out, and the name of your JavaScript file, and then the Dart file after that, and hit enter, and it's going to convert everything to JavaScript for you. So it's very easy to use. And that's all we're going to do here, HTML-wise. Now let's go over and write some Dart code. Alright, so if we want to, well, first off, if you want to have comments, just put 2 // and comment. And if you have multi-line comments, you're just going to do something like this, and then the final star and the /. So that's comments. If you want to import libraries, you're just going to say import Dart HTML, and that's going to allow us to interact with our HTML document. And I'm also going to import another math library, and there that is. So that's how we were able to import libraries. And the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to set it up so that the user will be able to go on to the browser, type in 2 numbers, hit add, and then the value up here, this calculation, is going to show the calculation or the math that's involved. Just to get this out of the way, if you wanted to have a constant inside of Dart, you're going to type in const, and then we could say something like pi value is equal to 3.14. And this is the way we're able to define that this is going to be a double or a floating point unit with decimals. And that's basically it. So just wanted to get that part out of the way. Now what we're going to do is add a click listener over here to the button, that whenever this button is clicked on, it's going to execute an application. So if you want to add a quick listener to this button over here, you're going to type in querySelector, and then you're going to type in exactly what you're trying to target. You're going to put a hash symbol in here since this is an ID, and you're going to say on click and then listen, and then here you're going to type in the function you want to execute when that button is clicked on. Common error is to forget this little hash symbol or number symbol here, so make sure you remember to put that in. Now we're going to create that function, and if this function isn't returning anything, you're going to type in void and then get some, and it's going to be passed a mouse event because that's the way that it was triggered, and you can get different information about that mouse event there. And now what we're going to want to do is get the value that was entered here, and then add them up and then update this. So if you want to get that value and add it together, what we're going to need to do is create an integer, and let's just call this number 1, because if you want to perform arithmetic, you need to convert it from a string, which is what this is going to be whenever you get it from the browser, into an integer. And to convert a string into an integer, you're just going to type in int parse, and this is going to work with all the different data types converting from strings to integers. querySelector, and then inside of here, whatever you're going to be targeting. Again, remember that hash symbol, num1. And then this is an input element over here that we're pulling this information from. So we're going to type in as input element, and I'll get into the different elements that we'll be able to work with. And then you're going to type in value, and there you go. And that is how we're able to go in and grab that value that is in that input element here and bring it over, and we're going to do exactly the same thing for number 2. Just change that to num2, and there we go. You can see the little errors come up here. It just says that we're not using them and all this stuff. Don't worry about that. Now if you want to create a variable and not assign it a type, which means it's basically going to be able to switch from one type to another, we're just going to say var and whatever the variable name is, and num1, num2, let's perform that arithmetic, and then converting that into a string just allows us to go in there and type in toString, and there you go. Now you got a string, because if you want to put something into your HTML document, it needs to be a string. So that's how easy that is. Now we just need to go in there and update calculation with the actual calculation that's going to be performed. We're going to use querySelector again, and we're going to say sum so that we can get access to that, and then text because we want to change the text. And then inside of this, you're going to type in $, and then your variable name plus, and this is how we were able to format strings. And num2 again is equal to, and then type in sum again. So it's pretty easy to work with, and that's all we need to do. So we're going to save that. Then we're going to jump over here, and we're going to convert it into JavaScript. And there, that's set up. And then we can type in reload, and then we'll say something like 6 and 7 and hit add. And you can see that it went and updated that and put that little mathematical equation up there for us. So that's how we go in and pull information from our HTML script and update it and do a whole bunch of other things. Now let's go in and take a deeper look at variables. Now what I'm going to do here is, just to keep this very simple, I'm going to call a function that I'm going to call variable test. And then I'm going to come down here, because all your execution begins with main. So everything starts there and ends there basically. But of course we can call other functions outside of it. And then we're going to create this function. So variable test, there that is. It's not going to receive any parameters passed to it. So that's the reason why this is empty right inside of there. And there's basically 6 variable types in Darts. You have integers, you have floats, you have booleans, you have strings, lists, and maps. So those are your different data types. So we're going to work with all of them. If you, once again, if you just want to create a variable that does not have a defined data type and just let Dart figure out what the data type is, you just type in var and wherever that is. And of course you can do the same thing with your strings. So you can say something like that, and there you go, and that's going to work, of course. However, we're also going to be able to come in and specifically define a data type. So there we go, created a string, and then just call this random string. And you can see you can do it either way. Booleans are defined with bool, and they can either hold a value of true or false. If I stop spelling things wrong, and there we go. So true or false is what you're going to store in a boolean. You're also going to, of course, be able to store integers, and the maximum integer size that's going to be available to you is this gigantic number, and the minimum is going to be the negative version of that. And as per doubles, let's just go and throw pi inside of there again. You're going to be able to store pretty large numbers in your doubles. Just to understand that if they're only going to have 15 digits of precision, so anything over 15 digits decimal wise is not going to be precise, so you can't really rely on it. And then let's go in here and actually do querySelector again. And here I'm going to change output. This guy right here has the ID of output. So I'm going to just go this and output, and to change the text, that's how easy that is. And I could do something like max int, and then you're going to be able to also go in here and put these values between curly braces and perform arithmetic directly inside of there if you'd like to. If you want a new line, just put a backslash and an n, and I could do something like this with pi. And again, I'm going to come in and do another $sign and curly bracket, and then say pi value plus, and then we'll throw in a pretty big number right there, and then close that off. And then if we come over here and convert that into our JavaScript, we're then going to be able to jump up here and click on reload, and you're going to see those numbers add out there. And you're also going to notice that we have this big giant number, see 992 at the end there, and even though we went and added 1 to it down here, it's still 992. And you can also see the same with the double. So just be aware of the fact that you can only have numbers of such a large size. Let's get rid of that. And then also we're going to be able to come in and create lists. So let's just have this be a random list. And how we're going to get more in detail with all these guys. There's a list. And also we're going to be able to create maps or combinations of key valued pairs by just coming in here, and this will be the key. 1 would be the key, and then Tom Smith would be your value. And you're going to notice that you're going to separate your keys and your values with a colon, and then separate the different map items inside of here with commas. So that's how we create all of those different data types. Now let's jump over and take a look at all the different math functions that are available to us. Okay, so I'm going to call this math test, and we're going to do basically the same exact thing here again. One thing that's good to know about are random numbers, and if we want to create a random number, we can just go random like this, new random, and that's going to allow us to create random values. And let's go and create another one. Let's just call it number is equal to 6.45. Then how we're going to be able to actually get random numbers is use that random object we have right there. And if we want a random integer value, you're going to see there that it's going to tell you exactly what you need to know. If you want to generate a number from 0 to 100, you're just going to type in 100 like that, and that's going to give you a random value between 0 and 100. And there are tons of little math functions, and I just went and typed these in here real quickly so you'll be able to look at them. See right here, again, we're using querySelector to update the output. We're changing the text right here, and then you can see exactly how we're able to perform addition directly inside of here. And you can perform addition and subtraction and multiplication and division, as well as modulus, which is going to return the remainder after a division. And you can see all the other different functions. We have log functions and max functions and min functions and power functions and rounding. And then you can see right here where we're using the random number generator, where we're generating a bunch of numbers between 0 to 100. And bounce over here and reload it. You can see all of the results of all those different calculations, and here's the random numbers and so forth and so on. So I'll leave it to you to play around with that, but that's just a rundown of a lot of the functions that are available to you. And of course there's a whole bunch of other ones we can play around with. You have all of your arc cosine and cosine and sine and tangents and all those other different functions available. And there's also going to be shortcuts that are going to be available for you. If you wanted to come in here and let's say you had a variable with x and you wanted to add a value to it. So let's say you wanted to increase the value by 2. You could do that real easily just by going plus equal to and then 2, which is shorthand notation. And of course you have the same thing for subtraction and multiplication and division. And that's a rundown of a whole bunch of different math functions. Now let's jump over and take a look at conditionals. So I'm going to change this to conditional test and conditional test. And the different relational operators that are going to be available to us are very common. Equals, not equals, greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, and less than or equal to. And then you're also going to have logical operators, and those are going to be and, or, and then of course not. So let's go in here and let's use these, see exactly how they work. Let's create a string and let's call this output. We're going to use this to make it easier to output information into our browser. And let's create an age equal to 13. Again, I'm letting it just automatically create that. If we wanted to use an if statement here, we could say something like if age is greater than or equal to 5 and, which means both of these have to be true, age is less than or equal to 6, and make sure that's closed off. Then we're going to put brackets here, and we're going to change output like this to go to kindergarten. Now we can come down here and let's throw in another condition. And to do that, we'll just say else if, move that over there so it's a little bit neater. We could throw in another condition. Its age is greater than 18. Then we could come in and change our output equal to go to college and then throw in a new line there. And then finally we would say else if none of the other things matched. We want to change our output equal to, and then make sure you put it in quotes, go to grade, and then a $sign. And let's perform a little arithmetic. Let's take the age minus 5, throw in a new line. Now we can do other things, of course, with these different relational and logical operators. Let's go and get our output again, equal to, and let's go and see what happens when we put the not symbol before the true, equal to, and not symbol, and there's true. Similarly, we can come in and also see what happens with the or symbol, and we'll go true and false. And we might as well just come in here and do a couple other different things. Let's take a look at switch and how that's going to work for us. Let's create a string and we'll call this superhero equal to Superman. Now the switch statement is going to be used whenever we have a limited number of things we want to check for. And we just type in switch and then put the variable we're going to be working with inside of it. And then we're going to check whether the value for superhero is equal to Batman. And if it is, we're going to change the value for output. And we'll say something like Batman is Bruce Wayne. And then if we don't want to continue checking all the other different things, which most of the time we're not going to want to, we're going to put a break in there. And then we'll do another condition. We'll say case, the value for superhero, which is what we're checking against. If that's equal to Superman, well, we're going to do pretty much exactly the same thing and break out of that. And then the default, if nothing else comes back as true above, we're going to say default, and we're going to have our output, and there we go. And that closes that off. And then finally what we'll do after we have all those done is we'll go and get our querySelector. That's going to allow us to update our output ID that we have over here and just reference
text and change it, and then we'll throw output into that. And a little bit of a bug up here, let's get rid of that, and then change that to this, and come in here and put that little bracket inside of there, and everything else looks fine. So let's jump over here, convert it into JavaScript, and reload this, and you can see right here, go to grade 8 is what was calculated. You can see here when we use not, it's going to convert whatever is inside here to its opposite, so it's true, it becomes false. If either of these are true, it's going to come back as true, and you can see here that Superman's Clark Kent came back as a match with the switch. So that's a lot of the different things we can do with conditionals. Now let's jump over and take a look at looping. I'm going to come in here and change this to loop test, and then of course change this to loop test. And I'm going to create an integer here. I'll just call it I just to keep it simple, and 0. A while loop is going to look very much like you're used to. We're just going to put a condition in here. And while this condition is true, we're going to continue to perform different calculations over and over again. And we'll just come in here. We could just put a $sign and I, since we're not performing any other calculations. You could use the curly brackets, and some people do. So you can do it whatever way you'd like. And here we can use the shortcut for incrementing, which is exactly the same as if you would come in and say I plus 1 like that. So those two things are equivalent. And then we could come out and do our output again, plus equal to, and then throw a new line into it after it's all done with that. And that's the simple way that we're able to use while loops. So not much different than most languages. We're also going to have the option to use do while loops, which is what you're going to use if you want to guarantee you go through your loop at least one time. And here I'm going to also throw in a value for I. And then what you do that's different, let's actually decrement this. So you can also do that shortcut as well. And then we can also put our while loop at the end of it and say we want to continue performing that decrement on that value as long as I is greater than 0. And then don't forget to put that semicolon there. And that's how do whiles work. We're also going to have for loops, of course. And a for loop is used so that we can have everything self-contained into our loop structure, so we don't have the values here where we're decrementing. We don't have to worry about this being outside of the loop. We can do everything all in one place. So for example, we can create a variable of j and give it a value of 1 and say we want to continue looping as long as j is less than or equal to 30, for example. And then we can say we want to increment that. We don't put a semicolon at the end there. Now inside of it, let's do a couple other different things. Let's demonstrate how continue works. So we could do something like take j modulus of 4, and basically what we're saying is if j is a multiple of 4, we want to do something. So 0 like that, and the thing we want to do is continue. And what continue means is we're just going to skip everything that follows for the rest of our loop and jump up here, increment the value of j, and continue on. So that's what continue does. We could also come in here and perform another condition. If j is equal to 25, for example, we could say that we want to break out of the loop, which means end the loop execution. We'll jump down here to where the loop comes to an end, so down here. So that's what the break does. And then otherwise, we could say if j modulus 2 is equal to 0, which means it's a multiple of 2 or an even number, then what we want to do is change our output, and we're going to say that we would just want j inside of there. And then we could also go and get this guy right here, and let's throw it after the do while loop, and then let's also throw it after our for loop is all done. And what the heck, let's go and create one more here just so we can have a little bit more information. We could also come in and create a multiplication table. So let's go int k is equal to 0, and we're going to continue looping as long as k is less than or equal to 10, and then we want to increment the value of k each time, and then throw another for loop inside of it, and this one's going to be l equal to 0. We're going to continue looping as long as L is less than or equal to 10, and then we're going to increment L, and then we can have our output come in here and change the value of that, and then get the value of K times the value of L is equal to, and then perform our little calculation here, K times L, and a new line, and then reload this. And you can see all the different calculations that we did right here. So here we have our while loop, which is going to be printing out from 0 to 10. We have our do while loop, which is going to be decrementing, so it's going to go from 11 to 1. Then we have our for loop here, which is going to print out all of our even numbers. However, if it's a multiple of 4, we are not going to print it out. And as you can see, none of the multiple of 4 are printed out. And even though this was supposed to go from 1 to 30, it actually is only going to go 1 to 25, and the reason why is because of this guy right here. You can also come down here and see all of our different multiplication tables and all of those different things that printed out there. So there's a rundown on looping. Now let's take a closer look at strings. All right, now of course strings are either going to be created whenever you surround something with double quotes or single quotes. Most of the time you're going to be using double quotes. And if you want to concatenate or combine strings, let's go random string. You could do something like I, that, and just put a plus sign inside of there. Am, a long, and let's go and put another one inside of here. So that's how easy it is to combine strings. And we can come in and create another one so that we can work with the two of them. And we'll just call this other string. Now we're going to be able to come in here and get the output, let's say the 0 index or the first index. And to get the value that is stored inside of there, or the very first element in our string, we're just going to type in the string's name and then 0 and then end your curly bracket. We can also come in and compare these different values, say something like strings equal, and then go and see if they are equal to each other. And how we can do that is just go random string dot compare to, and then the string that you want to compare it to, which we only have one other one here, so there we go. And then close that off and then put a new line. So that's how we can compare strings, not with the equal sign, but compare to. We can also come in and check if a string contains a certain word. So I just go and we're going to output this, and we could say word long in string. So long is going to be what we're looking for, and we can just go random string, and we'll just say contains, and we're going to say what we're looking for. So that's the string we're looking for, and then afterwards, what index do we want to start searching from? Well, we'll start from the very first one. You don't need to use that. You can start searching from another index if you'd like. We could also get the index of a match. So we'll just do index of long. The word long is what I'm talking about here. And we'll just do random string again. And to get that, we'll say index of, and then we'll type in the word that we're looking for. We could also come in and do a find and replace. Replace spaces, and rather than output this information, we could save it to another variable or something like that. So what we're going to say here is we want to replace all of our spaces with a comma and a space. Close off our curly bracket. We could also come in and split our string into a list. So list words, and we could get random string and say split, and then we just have to tell it how we want it to split. So if we want to split all the words based off of spaces between the words, that's how that's done. We're going to be able to also come in and get the length of a string, random string, length. We could also get a substring from inside of this guy. And so let's, for example, let's go index, starting at the very first index to 4 spaces in. So we want to get whatever starts at the first index through the first 4. So we want to get the first 4 characters in our string, just to keep that simple. And to do that, random string, substring, that's the length, curly brackets. You can see there's a whole bunch of different ways we can work with strings. We could also come in and change the string to uppercase. $, random string, and that's to uppercase, which is a simple function. And likewise, we'd also be able to convert all of these into lowercase. We do this because it might make it easier for us to be able to come in and search for words if we know everything's uppercase or lowercase. And then this, of course, will just be lowercase. We're also going to be able to come in and trim our strings, which means just get rid of any leading or trailing white space. We could save it back into random string afterwards if we decide we don't care about the original version. And that's just with trim like that. And then we'd also just be able to trim just white space on the left or white space on the right, just by using those guys, but we're just going to use this trim right here. And we'd also be able to check if a string is empty. We're almost done. We've covered pretty much everything you'd ever want to do with strings. So we can say something like is empty, random string. Make sure you put your curly brackets here, is empty. And that's basically all the different things you're going to use a lot. And then one error down here just says we didn't use list words. We'll get into cycling through all that stuff here in a moment. Let's convert this into JavaScript. And you can see right here, 0 index is I. So that's this guy right here. And this is where it's getting the I from. Strings are equal. No, they're not. Came back with a value of -1. Word long in string. Is it in there? Yes, it is. There that is, and you can see right here exactly where we're using contains to see if long exists. Index of long, that's how we're getting this one. It starts at the 7th index. See here where we replaced all of the spaces with a comma and a space, right like that. String length is 18. You can see here it grabbed the first 4 letters. Here it converted everything to uppercase. Here it converted everything to lowercase. And is it empty? It comes back as false. So there's a whole bunch of different things we can do with strings inside of Dart. Now let's take a look at functions. And now let's create a whole bunch of functions. So you can call a function by name and just pass in the different parameters that you want it to use. And how we're going to do that here, what we're going to do is perform a multiplication of 3 times 34, just because that's what I just thought of. And let's call our function we're going to create here in a second, get mult, and pass in 3 and 34. It's giving me an error because it's saying you didn't create that function yet. No problem, we'll create it in a moment. And there we go. Now let's come down here and let's actually create get multiplication. So this is going to return an integer, so we're going to put int inside of there, and its name is get mult. And we're going to define the data type for the different parameters that are passing in. So we expect an integer and another integer to be passed inside of there. Everything's going to be surrounded with curly brackets. Then we're going to define an integer inside of here, and this is what we call a local variable. This is a variable that's only going to be available inside of here. So if we tried to get the value of val outside of that function, we're not going to be able to get it. You can play around with that for homework and see exactly how you cannot get the value of val even though it was created in this function. And then what we'll just do is return the value. So very simple. So that's how we're able to call this function, and this is the calculation it's going to be performing inside of it. You're also going to be able to come in here and define a function on a single line. So let's say we wanted a function that just doubles whatever gets passed into it. We can do it this way. Equals to, and then the greater than sign, and then you're going to define exactly what your function does inside of it, and there you go. That's how you would create a single line function. Pretty useful, and we could call that inside of here, and we're going to do that here in a moment. And you can call that inside of here, so let's just go output, and let's take something like 56 times 2 is equal to, and we'll just throw a $sign and times 2. And that's how we can call that function, and just pass in 56 for the value we want to work with. Close off the curly bracket like that, and that's very useful. Let's go and create a couple more functions here. So output equal to, let's say we want to add a list of items from 1 to 10. Let's come down here and create add list. And this guy is actually going to return a string that's going to be stored directly inside of output. So we're going to put string there, and it's going to add a list of items. So we're going to say what's the starting value we want to start with. And then if you want to make a parameter optional, you would surround it with brackets like this. You're still going to define the data type for it. If you wanted to give it a default value, you'd put equal 1 inside of there. Now if it's a default value, you do not need to put a value inside of there. I just did it that way just to show you 2 different things instead of 1. Now let's go and create a string, and let's call this string list is equal to, and just put nothing inside of it to start off with. Now how I'm going to calculate this or create it is I'm going to cycle through values using our for loop while I is less than or equal to the quantity that was passed inside or wasn't passed inside. Remember, it was optional since it's inside of brackets like that. And then we can go and get our string list, and you can also concatenate strings or combine strings by just using that shortcut method that we have right there, and we'll put I inside of there like this. Like I said, you can do it this way or you can do it that way. I don't know. Either way, it doesn't matter. And we'll separate all those values with commas and spaces. And then after we have created our string list, we can return those values by just going string list plus, and then let's throw a new line at the end of it. And there we go. So that's how we're able to use default values as well as parameters that are optional. We can also come in and pass functions just like any other variable. So let's go and let's create times 3 just like we used times 2 above. It's a single line comment or a single line function. So there's that, and that's going to multiply whatever values pass inside times 3. Now what we'll be able to do, and let's perform calculation of 67 times 2 is equal to, and then here we're going to create a function below that's going to be called multiply, and it's going to be passed in some number, doesn't matter what it is, and it's also going to be passed in a function that's going to be passed inside of there. And of course you can do this with any function, not just single line functions. Just wanted to point that out. And let's do pretty much the same exact thing for the other function, just to show how they both work. This, and then we'll just change this to 3, and then we'll have times 3 passed inside there that time. And then we'll come down here and create our multiply function. It's going to return an integer, and there's multiply. It's going to get an integer passed inside of it, and here you can put anything you want. You don't have to define what it is. I'm typing in func. It can be anything, whatever the variable name is for that. And then to multiply or use that function with the supplied value, just do it that way. So it's very streamlined, very easy to use. And we'll execute all these here in a second. Final thing I wanted to show you is how recursive functions work, which is just a function that's going to call itself. Sounds way more complicated than it is. And hopefully this one example is going to show you exactly how it works. So let's say we wanted to get the factorial of 4. We're going to create another function called factorial, and we're going to pass the value of 4 inside of it. And now we'll come down here and create factorial. So it's going to return an integer called factorial. It's going to receive an integer that we're going to call num. And if num is less than or equal to 1, this is very important. Every recursive function needs a way out, or a situation in which it's not going to be calling the function to execute again. And this is that way out. So in this situation, once it gets to the point where a number is less than or equal to 1, it's going to return a value of 1, and it's going to stop performing calculations. Else, if it isn't, it's going to return num times, and it's going to call itself again. So factorial, and here we are going to decrement the value of num. And there we go. We have all those saved. And let's look at our little bugs we have here. The function times 2 is not used, and then here it says the function times 2 is not defined. What's that mean? Fix that bug just by just putting in the times part. You can see here, unused import's the only error that's left. Let's go and get rid of that. It's complaining about this math function or this math library. There we go. Now all our errors are gone, and we can save it and reload it. And you can see right there all the different calculations that were being performed. Let's go and grab this guy, copy that out of there, and paste it after this so that we get all our results. Again, change it into JavaScript, and now reload it. And there you can see everything that we just did. And you can see here 3 times 4, how we used the get multiplication and how that was output on our screen. We're going to see down here where we used times 2, 56 times 2, and how that was output. See how we created a list, which is just a string, and then we output that string on the screen. You can see here that we were able to do multiplications by passing in functions, just as they were regular old parameters, and how those calculations worked out. And you can also see how the factorial was calculated. Still a little bit more detail though, exactly how the factorial works, so this makes sense. So the first time that we cycle through our factorial function, we're going to have a value of 4 passed in, of course. So this right here is going to be 4. Then we come down here, and of course this is going to have a value of 4. So let's just come in and let's do that 4 times. And then we're going to say factorial, and then this time we're going to pass in a value of 3. So this is the second time that we're calling our factorial function. This time num is going to be equal to 3. We're going to multiply that times factorial of 2, because we decremented that value. And then the third time through, num is going to be equal to 2 multiplied times the factorial of 1 in that situation, which means that is going to kill our little function, or we're not going to be calling the factorial function again. So this is equivalent to 2 times 1, which is going to be equal to 2. Then we'll get up here, and then we'll have 3 times, and then we're going to get this 2 right here and throw it up here, which is going to be equal to 6. And then we'll come up here and we'll get 4 times 6, which comes from this guy right here, which is equal to 24. And that's how we perform our factorial calculations. So that's all we're going to do with functions. Now let's go and take a look at lists and maps. And lists are just going to be used to store lists of items which have an index. I mean, pretty simple. How you create one is just typing in list like that, and then we'll just call this empty list because that's what it is. We're also, of course, going to be able to store values inside of them, otherwise they'd be kind of worthless. And we can store multiple different data types. We could say Derek and 40 and 175.5. There's a whole bunch of different data types we can store inside of there. We're, of course, going to be able to use for loops to cycle through list items. There's actually a couple different ways to do this, and I'm going to show you how to do it in those multiple different ways. So let's say we want to cycle through this as long as we have list items. Well, one way to do it is to use the length of the list, and that's how you get the list length, if you were wondering about that. And we could output this as well, and random list, and then just cycle through and get all the indexes, and that's how you get index values. Of course, we want to convert this into a string because we don't know what they are, and it's very easy to do that even though they have multiple different data types, or it could have multiple different data types. And then we can put a comma between each of those different items. And then might as well just come in here and do output equal to, and we'll throw a new line in there as well. So that's how we can cycle through and print those items out. We could also come in and add items to our list just by using the word add. So we could come in and say something like Pittsburgh. We could also come in and remove items by using remove. So it's 175.5. There it goes. Now it's gone. We could also cycle through a list using something called for each. So it's just going to go and get all of those different items we have here. And what we need to do is put a value inside of here that's going to hold the list item for us. And then we need to define exactly what we want to do with it inside of here. And we could say something like list item, just so we can see inside of our browser exactly what we're working with. And we'll close that off. So that's how for each works. Another way to cycle through those. We could also come in and go for, type in the data type value in rand list, and then output once again and say value, whatever the value is, and convert it into a string. And then to the end of that, concatenate with a comma and a space, and then go and get our new line up here, paste that inside of there. So there's 3 different ways to cycle through list items. You could also come in and define a list that is going to force the user to only be able to hold one type of data. So we could type in any different data type in there, but I'm going to use string here. And I'll type in a couple of my made-up friends. We have my made-up friend Bob. Whoop, make sure you put your brackets inside of here. So there's Bob and Tom, and we can save that. And you can see right here exactly how all this works. So here we've cycled through all these with this for loop and printed out all those different data types. We went and added in Pittsburgh, removed the weight, and then we went and called a for each. We then used the for each block here to print out all these different list items, as you can see right there. And here we used the for in way of looping through to print out all the different data types. And you can also see the Pittsburghs here, and 175.5 is now missing. So that's a whole bunch of different ways we can work with lists. Now let's take a look at maps. Now, a map is going to store a key value pair, just like we talked about before. It's very important to remember that it's not ordered, and it is going to be able to hold any data type, but whenever you have your keys, all the keys must be unique. Let's come in and create a kind of a useless empty map just to show you how an empty map looks. And there you are, there's an empty map. Now we can create another one. Let's say we wanted to have one that is state capitals. There that is. And how we're going to define this, remember you can use any data type that you'd like, but this is unordered, so we can have Alabama, colon, and Montgomery, and we're going to separate all of these with colons for the key and the value. This is the key, this is the value, and then commas for separating the different map parts. So Alaska, colon, and we'll type in Juneau, and there we go. We just created ourselves a map. Could also come in and create another one just to show you we can use different data types. So remember, the keys have to be different for all the different types, and we could even put multiple maps inside a map. So let's say we also wanted to have name inside of here, and we could say something like Paul Smith, and then inside of that we could have balance and define that Paul Smith owes us money, 120. Let's say he owes us $120.25. There you go. That's how you can put maps inside of maps. And then we can go and output this information on our screen. The capital of Alabama is, and let's go and get that capital. How you would get those different capitals is go state capitals and then pass in your key. Close that off, put your curly bracket inside of there, and close off your entire string. And we're also going to be able to come in and get our customer information. And here we could say something like Paul Smith's balance is, and then we'll pay reference to the map's name, so customers. And then we want to target a specific key, so there's 100. And then we want to target Paul Smith's balance. So that's how we would do that. Curly brackets, new line, and there that is. You'll also be able to, of course, come in and change the value of a map. So we can just go customers, and let's change 100, and we can target the balance again in this situation just to show you how that works out. Let's say Paul came in and paid off his debt that he has to us. There we go, and that's how we would figure that out. And we might as well just come in here and copy this again just to show you that the output went and changed, or the balance changed since we did that. And we'll also be able to come in and remove map items. So let's say we want to remove whatever has the key of Alaska. That's how that is. Could also come in and do state capitals, and we'll type in add all. And here we want to add a new item in here. And like, let's say we wanted to come in and say Arizona and Phoenix. And that's how we would add an item into our map. And then we can come in and do state capitals and use for each. We could use for loops, but for each works pretty well here. For each. And if we wanted to get the keys and the values, we just pipe in both of those different items we have there. And then we want to tell it exactly what we want it to do, which is going to be that we want to output this information, and we want to get the key, and we want to get the value, and print that out on a screen, or put it in the browser. And there we go. Got all that set up. Come over here, convert it into JavaScript, and reload it. You can see here, it comes back with capital Alabama is Montgomery. Here, Paul Smith had a balance of $120.25. Here, he paid it off. Here, we went and printed out Alabama, Montgomery, and Arizona and Phoenix, and we did that with our for each block. So that's how we work with lists and maps. Now let's take a closer look at how we can manipulate HTML elements using Dart. Okay, so querySelector provides us with multiple different actions we can perform with it. It's really a great little function. Also, what it's going to allow us to do is return an element object that can be used to manipulate elements if we provide it with just an ID. So here what we're going to use is calculation, which we come over here, we can see that it has an ID of sum, and we can just come in here and we can say we want an element object, and I'm just going to call it title because that's the first thing that came to me. And we can use querySelector, and then we can come in and it's an ID, so we put the number sign or hash there, and there we go. Now we're going to be able to do all kinds of things with it. Very simply, we'll be able to then go and set the HTML or the value of it or the text for it. So set inner HTML, and we could have something like take me to your leader. I don't know. There we go. That's going to change that. We can also come in and change the color of it just by going title style color, and then we can put a hexadecimal code inside of there, or we could just type in blue or whatever you'd want to do. And you could also, and this is the best thing you normally would want to do, is actually define a style. So let's come over here. I went and created a style right here, which is just a font size change like that, and we'll be able to reference that as well by just going title, classes, and then add, and then the style that we want to add to it. So title style. And why don't we go and output some information here as well to show you how easy it is to get the value that's stored inside of that HTML element. So there's inner HTML, and there that is. And you can see here, if we reload it, take me to your leader, we changed the text there, we also changed the style color on it, and we also changed the text size. And we did that with that guy right there. And you can also see take me to your leader shows up down here because we have this guy right here. So that's how to manipulate elements as well as get information out of them in a couple different ways. Now let's go and start adding elements inside of elements, which we can also do very easily. So we're going to again go and get an element object for a div in this situation, and that div is going to be this guy inside of here. Where is it? There it is, div box. So what we're going to do is go and we're going to play around inside of there. So again, we have to use querySelector, and we're just going to reference div box because that is the div we want to work with. It's very easy to add a div to it. We're going to say that we want to add a div element. So we have to define that. I'm going to show you all the other different types of elements you can also add inside of there. So we'll go new div element, right, like this, and we're going to get into classes and objects here as soon as we're done with this. We could then go samp div like this and change the text for it. So it'll say something like I'm a div. And then if we want to add this new div inside of the div box that's already there, we'll just go div box children, and it's going to add it to the end where there's actually nothing there. So it's just going to put it inside of there. So we're going to say sample div is what we want to store inside of there. Why don't we go and create a couple more. If you want to create an anchor element, that's how you do that. And sample anchor, and then we'll go new anchor element, and we could change the text for that. Text is equal to, we'll just put Google inside of there. We could also come in and change attributes for it by going set attribute like this. So let's say we want to change the href attribute for it. We could also come in and add text to the end of a child. So let's say we wanted to go sample anchor again, and append text, and we'll say something like is here, and then just so we can output this information and see what it looks like, and then go and get the value that is stored in sample anchor, and that's how we could get attribute values. You can see everything is very condensed, very easy to remember and use here. A for reference like that, new line, and there that is, and that's going to output there. And then of course you need to call the div box and say you want to actually go in and put or add our new sample anchor, and that's how we would do that. Why don't we go in and also insert a break statement. So again, we're going to go div box children and add a break statement. We could also just do it directly inside of here, create an element and a tag, and then BR. You can use any of the different tags to input those directly into your HTML document just by using that guy right there. And why don't we just save that, convert it to JavaScript, see how exactly that looks. And if we reload it, you can see right here, it says I'm a div, and it also said Google is here. Went and added that in there. So that's how we can add all those different elements inside of there. We could also come in and change IDs for elements. Let's say we wanted to change the ID for an input element. We can go element and input element is equal to new input element. We could then go input element, attributes, and specifically target the ID and make that equal to input element, and then go div box and add it, our input element that we just created. Now after we just created that input element, we can also add a mouse event to it. So input element and change, and there's going to be a mouse event on that. Let's just do this on a single line function, and here we could go and call our querySelector once again and specifically target output and target this guy right there and change the text on it equal to output plus, and we'll do something like input changed, something like that, just so we'll see on the screen exactly how that works out. And now what we'll do is add a change listener to this input element. So querySelector, input element, and we'll say on change, just like we did before, listen, and we'll call input element change, which is this guy that we just created right there. Convert it to JavaScript, reload, and you can see down here we have our input element. You can see right here it says take me to your leader, and I'm just going to type inside of here just random stuff, and there you can see input element changed, and it also went and printed information about google.com. So pretty cool. Now I used a whole bunch of the different elements that are available inside of here. Like we came up here and we created anchor elements, and we also created div elements, and there's a whole bunch of other different elements we're going to be able to work with. And here is a pretty much complete list. There's all of them. Again, in the description underneath the video we have the whole detailed list and all this code. You can see here is an area element and break element and bottom element. You'll be able to use all of them and play around with them. And if you want the complete list, you can go right here to this link right there. Okay, so that is a whole bunch of different ways to manipulate HTML. Now let's jump over and see what we can do with classes and objects inside of Dart. Okay, just like in all other programming languages, your classes are going to define the attributes and capabilities of real-world objects. So let's just create a class, and this is outside of all the other different functions. That's very important. And let's just call it animal. Now, our animal class is going to have a couple attributes. So let's say that our animal is going to have a default of no name for its name, and also a sound. And let's just have this be no sound. And a variable that starts with an underscore, like this, like let's say we wanted to have weight, but we wanted to verify that the weight made sense. We would put an underscore, and that just means that it's going to be private and it can't be accessed by code outside of your program. And you can define how the user will be able to get that value by going get weight, and then you will provide that weight. So that's a way of sort of hiding those values. And here, using set, so this is like a getter and this is like a setter, we can also define set and say something like weight, and if they try to assign a value of weight, so we'll say if weight is less than or equal to 0, in that situation we're going to just set the weight back to the 0 value because an animal can't have a 0 weight. Otherwise, we're going to allow them to set the weight. Okay, so that's a way for us to protect our data, and that's the way getters and setters work inside of Dart. Likewise, we're also going to have constructors, which are going to be called anytime a new object of animal type is created. And how you define that is with the animal name, same name as the class. And in this situation, I'm going to say something like number of animals and we're going to increment the total number of animals that we have. And number of animals in this situation is going to be a static variable, which means it's going to be shared by every other animal object that is ever created. Every animal object is going to have the same value. And how you define something as static is static int, and then we're going to say number of animals. And since we don't have any in the beginning, we're just going to put 0 inside of there. And of course, we can also have static methods, and we just use the static name again, and this is going to return a string, get number of animals, and it's not going to receive anything, and it is just going to return whatever the current number of animals is. Of course, we're going to convert this into a string, however, and that's how static variables and static methods work. Basically, you're going to use static variables anytime it doesn't make sense for an object to have that value. So no animal object would know how many animals were created, so that makes sense for that to be a static variable. And you're going to use static methods anytime it wouldn't make sense for an object to have the capability of counting animals. Well, our animals normally can't count, so in this situation it makes sense for that to be a static method. And let's go and create a method for this as well. Let's create string and info, and what we're going to have this do is return some information about our animals, and that information is going to be the name and the sound and the weight. Now let's get up here inside here and talk about constructors, because constructors are a little bit weird inside of Dart. Now methods can't have the same name, so if you have multiple constructors, you must use what are called named constructors. So if you have a situation in which you want to be able to accept all three of the different attributes for our object, we're going to type in animal and whatever you want the name constructor to be. I just called mine 3 in this situation, just because that's the first thing that came into my mind. And there you are. We're going to also get weight inside of there. Now, if you want to reference an object's actual value, you use this, and that's a way that we can be able to reference an object even though we don't know what the object's name is. Let's see if it goes, yep, it went in there and corrected that for me. See, we're using the underscore. And then we could also come in and do number of animals and increment that as well each time a new animal is created. And another thing we could do, let's go and create another method. This is going to return a string and run, and then in this situation we'll just say return, and we'll reference this name. That's how we're able to get a value out of that, runs. And now that we created all those different objects and methods and all that stuff, let's jump up here and let's create ourselves some objects. So let's create an animal object called bear, and we just go new animal like that, and there you go, it's been created. And now we can come in and define the values that this is going to have. Let's say our animal bear is named Buddy, and he makes a sound of grr, and he also has a weight of 600 pounds. Well, now we'll be able to come in here and output all of this information, and of course we're just going to use the $sign and the curly brackets, and then we'll just go and reference exactly what we want to pull in. So we'll say something like said bear sound and weighs, and we can go and get the bear weight, and here we'll just use the regular old weight, call the run method, bear, and just call run. We're also going to be able to call the named constructor, so let's create another one, which is a tiger, and this is going to be new animal 3, and let's just call him Saber, and there's his sound, and there is his weight. And then we'll be able to output all that information just like we did before. So there's that. And we'll just change all these to tiger. Now your objects aren't going to be able to access your static methods or fields. If you want to be able to access those, you're going to have to use the class name. So let's just go like this. And we'll do number of animals if we want to get a hold of that. And then to get them, we'll just use the class name. And then we'll use get number of animals, call that function, and then close that off. And we can save that, and if we reload it, you can see Buddy says grr and weighs 600 pounds, Buddy runs, and the total number of animals is 2. So that's how we work with or create those objects. Now let's take a look at inheritance. Now whenever we are going to be inheriting from a class, that means that we just want all the attributes and methods that are inside of it. And to inherit, let's say we want to create a new class called dogs, and we'll just say extends, animal. That's all you need to do. Now you have access to all those methods and everything that was created in the animal. Now we could do something like come in here and create or extend this by saying that our dog animals are all going to bite. So there we are. You can reference those and say you don't need to go in and create the name. It's already inside of there. One thing you do have to do though is create all of or define all of your constructors. So that's something that's a little bit different than other languages. So we're going to go animal, and we can say something like number of animals and increment that. You can see here we're referencing the animal class here, not the dog class. Likewise, we're also going to come in here and use a name constructor for the situation in which we're going to get 3 attributes passed inside of here. And there's the weight. Again, we're going to do the same exact things that we did here. It's one of the weird things about Dart that is completely different than most other languages. There's that. Now we have all those saved. And if you want to override a method, like we had our info method up here, let's say we wanted to override this guy. It's actually very easy. You just go in there and type it in again, and that's going to override it. And we could do something like just listing this out. Yeah, why don't we go in and I'll actually show you how to call the super version of info. You just go return and super dot info like that, and that's going to call the superclasses version of info. And then we could also come in and say and bytes. And another thing we need to do is come up here and go animal, number of animals, of course. Now let's jump up here and use our inherited dog object. So here we are. Create a dog object. Let's call it Rover, equal to new dog. Use the named constructor here. And there's Rover and Wolf. And let's make him 85 pounds. And we're going to be able to output this in the same exact way. Let's just go and grab this guy right here. And instead we'll slap in Rover. And why don't we also come in and I'll show you what it looks like when we call the override method. When Rover, call info, of course. And you can see here Rover says Wolf, weighs 85 pounds, and there we are calling the info method. So that's how inheritance works. Now let's take a look at abstract classes. Now an abstract class can be inherited, however you cannot instantiate or create an object from it. So let's create an abstract class, and let's make its name shape. Now we're going to define the function that everybody that inherits from the shape abstract class has to implement. It's like a contract is what it is. And basically what we're saying is it's going to have to, if you inherit from the shape class, you're going to have to create an area method. Now what we'll do is we'll come down here and create another class, and let's call this rectangle extends. And let's have it extend the shape abstract class. And this is going to have a height and a weight. You can define both those on one line if you'd like. Let's go and create this is a shortcut way of creating a constructor that you can use. Let's just type this and height and this and weight. Saves you a little bit of time. That's normally how I do it. And then what we're going to have to do, of course, is define our area method. And let's just do this on one line because it's very simple. And it's just going to be height times weight. So that's how we can implement that. Could also, let's go and create a circle class as well. Extends, let's have it extend shape. It's only going to have a radius though, nothing else. But of course it is going to implement the area method, and it's going to do that. Pi is built in as long as you have the math library inside of here. Just copy this. And let's just type in math up here. There that is. We got rid of that error. And now what we'll do is take pi times, and we'll go radius times radius. And there we go. Now we have that implemented. Now we'll come up here and actually use this abstract class right here. So we got rectangle. Let's just call this rect. It's equal to new rectangle. And we'll pass in 5.0 and 10.0. And then let's go and create a circle as well and just call it circle. There that is. And we'll pass in a radius of 5.0. And now we'll be able to output all that information as well. And we're going to do it in the same way as before. Area and circle, area. And we'll throw a new line, and there we are. And make sure to put that quote right there. Another thing that's important to know is you can actually instantiate using a superclass and then cast to a subclass. So we could go shape rect2 is equal to new rectangle 5.0 and 25.0 just to make it different. And then what we'll be able to do is go output plus equals to rect2 area. And here's how we'll cast. We'll go rect2 as rectangle. and then call the area on it. So that'll allow us to use the shape superclass and reference the subclasses of it. And it's giving me a little bit of an error. That's because I forgot to create the circle constructor down here. So circle, and then inside of this we'll go this, radius like that. And there we go. And if we reload it, you can see right here, rectangle area comes out, circle area comes out there, and there's the other rectangle. All right, so now let's talk about interfaces. Now, whenever you use interfaces, you're going to allow your classes to inherit from multiple different classes. And so let's create a couple interfaces. You just call class flyable. This, for example, and let's just say it has a function inside of it that when called says something like return flies. And let's go and create another one, class. Say we're going to have superheroes, so bulletproof, and this one is going to have a function called hit by bullet. And in this situation, it is going to return bullet bounces off. Now that we have those all set up, we're going to be able to come in here and create another class called superhero, and we're going to use implements and flyable as well as bulletproof. So you're going to be able to use both of those classes inside of there. And then what we'll be able to do is have string flying description is equal to flies, and then likewise we'll do a bulletproof description, which is going to have bullet bounces off. And then we have to define the functions that we want to have inside of here. And string fly is going to return this flying description. Now you can have it be whatever you want. I just did it this way to keep it simple. And then here, hit by bullet, return this bulletproof description. And now we'll be able to jump up inside of main and work with this guy. And let's go and create a superhero object and have it be Superman is equal to new superhero object, pass nothing inside of it. And then we could go in and go Superman dot and change the flying description for Superman if we'd like. Then a speeding bullet, and then go in and also change the bulletproof description to bounces off or something like that. And then of course we could now put this information and Superman fly, call that function, and we could do the same thing for the other guy. Reload it, and you're going to see Superman flies faster than a speeding bullet. Well, now let's take a look at mixins. Now, classes that inherit a mixin don't have to override methods, but instead they're used to extend another class. Like, for example, let's say we had vehicles, like a class named vehicle. And let's just keep this extremely simple. We'll just say that it just defines the number of wheels as equal to 4. Now let's say that each one of your vehicles you'd like to have an ID for them. Well, this is where a mixin would come in. So what this is going to do is it's going to make a unique ID for every single vehicle class that you have. So it's going to go int get ID, and it is going to create a unique ID based off of date time. And this is how you do that. Nice way to generate a unique ID based off of milliseconds and all that stuff. So it should be pretty unique. Milliseconds since epoch, like that. So that's what this guy does. The ID maker generates a unique ID for all of our vehicles. What we can do now is say class and car extends vehicle, and we'll have our cars do more things, and then you'll say with ID maker. And the ID maker is going to generate those IDs. And then inside of this, we could have something like string name is equal to no name. And then car is going to be passed in the name. And then this name is equal to name. And the ID is automatically going to be made for us since we called ID maker. Let's go up and take a look at it. So we'll go back up inside of main right here. And we're going to create a car type. And let's go Ford truck is equal to new car, and we'll just give it the name of Ford truck. I guess I should have made that a truck object instead of a car, but whatever. Now what we can do is we can go output plus equals to, and we can say that it has the ID, and then we'll be able to just simply call it, because it automatically has it, Ford truck, and get the ID that was automatically generated for it, and there that is. You can see that it automatically put the ID inside of there. So mixins are a really awesome way to add some functionality to our classes. So there is a whole bunch of information about objects and classes and all that stuff. Now let's go and take a look at how we can use operator overloading. So let's say you have a class and it is named point, like XY point, how you would define X and Y position for a point, and you want it to have X and Y points, of course, stored inside of it, and you want to have a constructor for it as well. Again, let's use the shortcut way of defining that in our constructor. So let's now say we wanted to use operator overloading to be able to compare these. Well, how you would do that is you would go operator, and the operator you want to be able to work with here is equals, and you want it to be able to come in and have a point sent to this point, whatever, whenever you're comparing one point object to another. And you're going to define inside of here what exactly is going to happen or when this operator is going to be true. So you're going to say that this is going to be true when the object's version of x is equal to the point that was passed inside of it, and also when y is going to be equal to points y value. And that's how simple it is to override that operator. Also, we'd be able to come in here and do something like we wanted to show how to override the addition of points. So again, this is past a point, and we're going to say we want to create a new point in which we add the values together. P x, this y, plus p y. And you could also override subtraction, multiplication, and all those other different things as well. So now we'll be able to come up here and create a new point. Just call it P1 is equal to a new point, 50, like that. And let's go and create another one of these, point 2. And we'll be able to check if the points are equal now, just by coming in here and going P1 is equal to P2. And we'll also be able to come in here and create another point, let's just call it P3, and say that its values are going to be equal to P1 plus P2. And we could do something like P3x, and then go and get the values for that. And we just P3.x, and then get the value for y as well. And you can see right there, are points equal? No. And then you can also see the value of x and y for our new point. And the final thing we're going to take a look at is exception handling. Now, exceptions are going to allow us to catch errors that otherwise would crash our program, which would be very bad. So what we're going to do down here is we are going to create a function called divide numbers. And it's going to receive number 1 and another int that's number 2. And then inside of here, let's go move this down here, move that all down here. Now inside of here, we are going to verify that they are not trying to perform a division by 0. So how we do that is surround everything with a try block. That's going to protect us. And we're going to say if number 2 is equal to 0, well then we're going to throw a custom exception by 0. Error is what we're going to call it, and we're just going to say error inside of here. And then in an exception test we'll call divide by 0, divide numbers, and then we will throw inside of here 4 and 0 so that it most definitely does not accept that. And then we'll say else if it isn't a 0, then we're going to provide output for it because we know it's going to be safe. And let's just perform that calculation inside of here. And now we'll go on divide by 0 error, and we can provide different output or different information in regards to the error. And now let's define our exception down here. And we do that by going class, and then it's going to be divide by 0 error, implements exception. And now inside of here we will set everything up. We'll go string, I don't know, we'll just say something like cause. And we'll say something like can't divide by 0 error, and pass this cause. So that's how we can create a custom exception and how to throw it and all these other different things. And then up here we'll pass error like that. And make sure that we go and put our semicolon outside of there. Sorry about that. And get rid of that guy right there. And then move this guy down here. And there we go. And then if we run that, you can see that can't divide by 0 pops up. So there you go, guys. That is a lot of information about Dart. Up next, I'm going to cover a whole bunch of things about JavaScript, object-oriented programming, and as well as all the frameworks you guys have been asking for, as well as games that are going to be able to work on iOS as well as on Android. Please leave your questions and comments below. Otherwise, till next time.